The night was heavy with rain when Maya clutched her stomach and felt another sharp wave tear through her body. She had been in pain for hours, but now it was different. The contractions came closer, stronger, almost unbearable. Her voice cracked as she whispered to her husband Daniel that it was time. He didn't hesitate. He rushed her into the car, his heart racing faster than the storm outside, and drove straight toward the hospital. He kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other on hers, his thumb brushing against her damp skin, whispering to her that everything would be all right. But the fear in her eyes told him she didn't believe it. When they reached the hospital, the bright lights cut through the darkness like sharp blades. Daniel pulled the car into the emergency entrance, jumped out, and hurried to help Maya. She could barely walk. Every step seemed to pull her deeper into agony. A nurse saw them, but instead of rushing over, she only glanced at them and pointed lazily toward a counter. Daniel's jaw clenched. He carried Maya's weight on his shoulder and led her inside. She was moaning, her voice trembling, begging for someone to help. Behind the counter, a doctor in blue scrubs looked up from his clipboard. His expression was flat, almost irritated, as if they had disturbed his peace. Daniel quickly explained that his wife was in labor, that the pain was unbearable, that she needed urgent attention. But the doctor only sighed. He tapped his pen against the clipboard, eyes scanning Maya like she was just another routine case. "You'll have to wait," he said in a clipped tone. "There are procedures. We'll get to her when we can." Maya's body curled forward as another contraction hit her like a hammer. She let out a cry so loud that it echoed in the hall. Still, the doctor did not move. Daniel felt his chest tighten with anger, but he forced himself to stay calm for Maya's sake. He guided her to a chair and crouched beside her, whispering words of comfort, though inside his veins boiled. He could see the sweat on her forehead, the way her hands clutched her stomach, the terror in her eyes. And yet, the man who should have been helping seemed determined to dismiss her suffering. The waiting room was cold. A television flickered silently in the corner, and the smell of disinfectant hung heavy in the air. Other patients watched quietly, some with sympathy, others with unease. Maya's cries filled the space, making it impossible to ignore. But the doctor remained behind the counter, scribbling notes as if nothing unusual was happening. Daniel rose to his feet. His voice was calm but firm when he asked again for someone to take his wife to a delivery room. The doctor looked up, his expression hardening. "Sir, you need to understand," he said slowly. "Pain is normal in labor. She is not the first woman to go through this. If you can't control her, then perhaps you should wait outside." His tone was dismissive, almost mocking, as though Maya's suffering was an exaggeration. Maya whimpered and whispered Daniel's name, her hand reaching out. Daniel turned back to her, knelt down, and held her tightly. He could feel her trembling. Against him, her breathing uneven. He whispered again that everything would be fine, though a storm of rage was building inside him. He had promised her years ago, on the day they married, that he would protect her from everything. And now, in this sterile and different place, he felt that promise breaking. A nurse finally approached, but not with urgency. She rolled her eyes as if annoyed and asked Maya questions in a flat, uncaring voice. Maya tried to answer, but her words were broken by pain. Daniel had to answer for her, his voice sharp with frustration. Still, the nurse only scribbled notes on a form and muttered that a room might be ready soon. The minutes dragged on like hours. Maya's cries grew louder, and Daniel's patience wore thinner. He could feel the eyes of strangers on them, could see the way the doctor smirked slightly at his helplessness. It was a cruel scene, one that burned itself into his memory. Daniel stood again, his tall frame casting a shadow over the counter. His voice was colder now, sharper. He warned the doctor that ignoring his wife's pain was not only heartless but dangerous. The doctor chuckled, shaking his head. "Sir, you don't tell me how to do my job," he said, looking Daniel up and down. If you don't like it, you can take her somewhere else. This hospital runs on rules, not on emotions." Daniel's hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a long moment he said nothing, only looked at the man who dared dismiss the woman he loved. The storm outside raged against the windows, lightning flashing across the glass, thunder shaking the air. Maya's cries rose with the storm, her body writhing with pain. And in that moment, Daniel made a choice. He leaned down to whisper to Maya, telling her to hold on just a little longer. His eyes then lifted to the doctor, sharp as steel. He didn't raise his voice, but the weight of his words carried like thunder. "You have no idea," he said slowly, "who you're speaking to." The doctor smirked again, thinking it was another empty threat. But the storm that was about to break over him was far greater than anything he could imagine. Asterisk rain drummed on the windows, while the clock ticked louder than any machine. Maya breathed in sharp, short bursts. Her hands squeezed the side rails until her knuckles turned pale. A nurse finally returned with a wheelchair, moving as if nothing was urgent. Daniel lifted Maya into it, whispering that he was here, that she was not alone. The nurse pushed them down a long hallway where lights buzzed above and doors clicked shut behind them. The doctor followed at a lazy pace, flipping pages on his clipboard, like this was a small task that could wait. Inside a small exam room, the nurse asked Maya to lie back. Maya tried, but another contraction tore through her, and she cried out. The nurse frowned, not with care but with annoyance. She clipped a band around Maya's belly and turned on a monitor. The screen lit up with lines jumping and dipping. Daniel watched the numbers, not as a stranger but as someone who understood more than he let on. He knew what steady looked like. He also knew what trouble looked like. The doctor finally stepped in. "You see? Contractions," he said, pointing at the screen like he had just solved a puzzle. "Normal. We'll watch for a while." He spoke to the nurse instead of to Maya. No need for a delivery room yet. Maya's breathing sped up. "Please," she whispered, tears spilling. "It hurts. Something feels wrong." "Pain is expected," the doctor replied, already turning away. Daniel kept his voice even. "Check her blood pressure, please now." The nurse rolled her eyes, but wrapped the cuff around Maya's arm. The machine hummed, then beeped. She read the number and went still for a second before masking it with a shrug. She did not report it aloud. "What is it?" Daniel asked. "It's fine," the nurse said, slightly elevated. Daniel's gaze hardened. He took out his phone, stepped just enough to the side to keep calm, and typed a short message to a number no one on this floor knew he had. The message was simple. "Come to exam 3, now." He slipped the phone back into his pocket and returned to Maya's side. He brushed a curl from her damp forehead. "I'm here," he said softly. "Keep breathing with me." Another contraction came like a wave hitting stone. Maya groaned, jaw clenched, body curling. The monitor's line dipped, then rose, then dipped again. Daniel looked at the nurse. "Print the strip," he said. "Now." The doctor gave a short laugh. "Sir, we make the clinical decisions here." "Then make one," Daniel answered, still calm. "Move her to a delivery room. And call an experienced midwife." The doctor set the clipboard down with a snap. "You are not in charge." A faint knock cut the air. The door opened, and a woman in crisp white stepped in, older than the others, steady eyes, gray streak in her hair. Her badge read Leela, Senior. Midwife. She did not smile. She looked first at Maya, then at the monitor, then at the blood pressure screen the nurse had left glowing. "How long has she been like this?" she asked. The nurse stammered. "She just arrived. We're observing." Leila pressed 2 fingers gently to Maya's wrist. She watched the rise and fall of Maya's chest. Then she turned to the doctor. "She needs a delivery room now," Leila said. "And fluids, and repeat pressure, and someone to stay with her." The doctor bristled. I make that call. You're making the wrong one, Leela replied. Voice cool and firm. Daniel did not move, but a quiet strength returned to his shoulders. Maya reached for his hand again, and he laced his fingers with hers. Another contraction hit. The monitor beeped. Lila leaned over Maya, speaking softly. You are doing well. Breathe with me. In for 4, out for 4. Good. Again. 2 orderlies appeared at the door, as if the hall itself had sent them. Lila nodded at them. Room 7, now. The orderlies unlocked the bed breaks. The nurse started to protest, but Leela's look ended it. The bed rolled out, wheels whispering over the floor. In the corridor, caregivers glanced up. Some recognized Leela's tone and moved aside. Others stared at Daniel and Maya with curiosity. The storm outside flashed white across the windows, and for a heartbeat, the whole hallway glowed. They entered room 7. It was bigger, warmer, with a wall of monitors and a soft overhead light. Lila gave quick, precise orders. Line in. Fluids. Running. Pressure every 5 minutes. Page neonatal standby, not panic standby. Her hands moved with confidence, wrapping a new band around Maya's belly, adjusting sensors until the screen settled into a readable rhythm. The doctor followed. Face red. You're out of line, he snapped at Lila. And you, he pointed at Daniel, you are interfering with care. Daniel met his eyes, steady and silent. He did not raise his voice. He didn't need to. A second knock came at the door. This time 2 people entered. A calm woman in a dark blazer with an operations badge, and a tall man in security gray. They did not ask permission to step inside. The woman's eyes found Daniel first. She gave the briefest nod, like a soldier receiving a signal. Lila checked the monitor again. Better, she murmured to Maya. Stay with me. She turned to the nurse. Please record those numbers accurately. Then, to Daniel quietly, she came in strong. We will keep her safe. Maya's breath slowed a little. Tears still shone on her cheeks, but there was a trace of trust now, a fragile line pulling her back from fear. Daniel squeezed her hand. You're brave, he said. You're the strongest person I know. The doctor stepped toward the operations manager. I'm handling this case, he said. These interruptions are unacceptable. The manager's gaze stayed level. We'll talk about interruptions after the patient is stable. She glanced again at Daniel, reading something in his calm that others had missed. On the monitor, the line dipped once more, then returned. Leela's hand stayed on Maya's shoulder. When the next wave comes, we breathe together, she said. Nothing else matters. Thunder rolled again, softer now. Inside the room, the sound of careful work filled the air. Fluid bags crinkling, quiet beeps, the steady rhythm of voices that knew what to do. Daniel stood where Maya could always see him. He said nothing more to the doctor. He did not need to. The room had changed. The story had shifted. And the man who thought he held all the power was only beginning to learn how wrong he was. Asterisk. The storm outside finally slowed, but inside the hospital room, the tension was heavier than ever. Maya gripped the sheets, sweat rolling down her temples. Her cries came softer now, not because the pain lessened, but because she was running out of strength. Daniel stayed close, his hand firm in hers, whispering steady words she could anchor. Too, he could feel the weakness in her grip, and it tore at him more than any storm ever could. Leela, the senior midwife, stayed calm. She adjusted the monitors, asked for fresh fluids, and gave quiet instructions to the nurse. Her eyes never left Maya's face. Daniel noticed that when she spoke, even Maya seemed to breathe easier. There was something solid about her, something that told everyone in the room she was not guessing. She knew exactly what needed to be done. The doctor, however, paced like a man whose authority had been bruised. He stood near the wall, arms crossed, glaring at the scene. He muttered under his breath, too low for anyone but the nurse to hear, about people not respecting his position. The nurse looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot, avoiding Daniel's eyes. Another contraction came hard and fast. Maya screamed, arching her back. The monitor beeped rapidly, lines dipping in a pattern Daniel recognized as dangerous. His chest tightened, and for the first time, his calm cracked. "She's in distress," he said sharply. "Do something." The doctor scoffed. "She's fine. Pain makes people act dramatic. She just needs to endure." Lila cut him off with a firm tone. "She's not dramatic. She's telling us what her body is saying. If you ignore that, you risk 2 lives." She pressed the call button, summoning more staff. Then she leaned close to Maya, whispering for her to hold steady, to keep breathing, to not give up. Daniel could see the fear rising again in his wife's eyes. He leaned down, his forehead nearly touching hers. "You are not alone," he whispered. "I will never let them leave you like this. Just hold on." The door opened, and 2 more nurses rushed in with supplies. One glanced at Daniel, recognizing something in his face, and immediately straightened her posture. She didn't wait for the doctor's order. She listened to Leela. "We need oxygen ready," Layla said, and the nurse moved quickly. The doctor stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Enough, you're overstepping. This is my case." Daniel finally turned to him fully, his eyes steady, his voice low but carrying weight. "And if she dies because of your arrogance, it will be your last case." The room went silent. The doctor blinked, stunned at the cold certainty in Daniel's words. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. The operations manager, who had remained quietly in the corner, finally spoke. "Doctor, step back. Senior midwife Lila is handling this now. If you cannot assist, leave the room." Her tone was sharp, official, and left no space for argument. The doctor's face turned red. He looked at Daniel again, as if searching for a reason why this man had such influence here. But Daniel did not explain himself. He simply turned back to Maya, brushing her damp hair back, whispering to her to breathe, to stay with him. The machines beeped steadily now. Oxygen flowed. Maya's chest rose and fell in rhythm with the midwife's guidance. The tension in the room shifted from fear to focus. Everyone moved with purpose, except the doctor, who stood frozen, humiliated in silence. Minutes later, the head of the hospital's board entered quietly. He was an older man with sharp eyes and a calm presence. He looked first at Maya, then at Daniel. When their gazes met, he gave a small nod of respect. "We'll ensure she receives the best care," he said softly. "Nothing less." The doctor's mouth opened in protest, but no words came. He finally realized who Daniel truly was, not just a husband, not just a man begging for help, but someone with power that reached far above his position. Maya, weak and trembling, clung tighter to Daniel's hand. She didn't yet know the full weight of his words or his influence, but she felt his strength and believed in it. Her lips formed a small whisper, barely audible. "Don't leave me." Daniel bent close, his voice steady as stone. "I never will." And in that moment, everyone in the room understood. This was no ordinary husband, and the man they had dismissed was about to change everything. The room settled into a tense rhythm. Machines beeped softly, nurses moved with purpose, and Lila's calm voice guided each step. Maya breathed with effort, her face pale but determined. Daniel never let go of her hand, speaking to her in low, steady words that carried more strength than any medicine. Outside the door, shadows gathered. Staff whispered in the hallway, curious why the operations manager herself was inside a delivery room. Whispers of Daniel's identity began to spread, carried from one mouth to another like sparks in dry grass. Some staff realized with shock who he was, the man who signed their paychecks, the quiet figure who rarely showed his face, but whose decisions shaped every corner of the hospital. Inside, Maya cried out again. The contraction hit harder, sharper, pulling her body into tremors. Lila leaned close, counting her through it. In, 2, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Good, you're strong. Stay with me. She pressed a hand to Maya's shoulder, grounding her. Then she looked at the monitor and spoke firmly. We need to prepare. She's moving fast. This will not be a long wait. The nurse by the equipment hesitated, then nodded quickly, fetching sterile kits and drapes. Her earlier carelessness vanished. Now she treated the case with the seriousness it deserved. Daniel noticed the change, but his focus stayed on Maya. He stroked her damp forehead. You're safe, he whispered. I promise you're safe. The disgraced doctor lingered in the corner, his pride crushed, but his anger not gone. His voice finally broke the hum of the machines. This is outrageous. Bypassing protocols, overruling decisions. You'll all answer for this. The operations. Manager turned on him with a gaze sharp as glass. No, you will answer for negligence. Her voice was calm but left no doubt. I will file my report directly. For now, you will not interfere. The doctor paled but held his tongue. For the first time, he realized his authority meant nothing in this room. Maya groaned again, her grip on Daniel's hand fierce. I can't, she whispered. Tears streaked her cheeks. Daniel leaned closer, his voice quiet but certain. Yes, you can. You are the strongest woman I've ever known. You've carried us through storms before, and you'll do it again. I believe in you. His words cut through her despair like a light in fog. She nodded weakly, pulling in another breath as Lila guided her. The room shifted again, filled not with fear now, but with determination. The minutes passed in a blur of pain and command. Nurses moved swiftly, instruments clinked, and Lila's calm never wavered. Then she looked up at Daniel. She's close. This baby is coming, and soon. Daniel felt his heart pound, but his face remained calm for Maya's sake. He bent to her ear. Our child is ready. You've brought us here. Just a little more. Maya sobbed once, half pain and half relief. She gripped his hand tighter, her eyes locking onto his. There was no one else in her world now, only him. The storm outside had passed, leaving only dripping rain against the windows. But inside, another storm was reaching its peak. Maya cried out, her body straining, the monitors beeping faster. Lila gave quick instructions, guiding her through the final climb. Asterisk at the edge of the room. The old doctor muttered bitterly, but no one listened. The truth had already settled in. The man he dismissed was not powerless. The woman he ignored was not voiceless. And the hospital he thought he ruled belonged to the very husband he had mocked. Daniel's hand never left Maya's. His voice never shook. He whispered strength into her with every breath, every contraction, every desperate push. And as the nurses moved swiftly, preparing for the arrival, a sense of reckoning filled the air. This birth would not only bring a child into the world, it would expose arrogance, test faith, and reveal truths hidden in silence for too long. Maya's cries filled the room, raw and powerful, echoing against the white walls. Sweat covered her skin, her body trembling from the strain. The monitors beeped faster, their sounds sharp and urgent. Daniel stayed right by her side, his hand steady in hers, whispering strength into her ear. You are almost there. Our child is waiting. I believe in you. Lila worked with calm precision. Her voice was firm, guiding Maya through each wave of pain. Push with the breath, not against it. You're doing it. Just a little more. Her words carried certainty, a promise that Maya was not alone. Nurses moved quickly around them, preparing everything that might be needed. The air in the room carried both fear and hope, like the world was holding its breath. The disgraced doctor leaned in the corner, arms crossed, bitterness dripping from his silence. He dared not interrupt, but his eyes burned with resentment. He had been stripped of his authority, and everyone knew it. The operations manager stayed near the door, watching, making sure nothing and no one interfered again. Maya's body shook as another contraction hit. Her voice cracked into a scream, and she gripped Daniel's hand so tightly it hurt, but he didn't let go. He leaned closer, his forehead against hers. One more, just one more. You can do this. Her eyes filled with tears, but deep inside them was fire of a woman who would not be broken. She pushed with every ounce of strength left in her. The monitors spiked, the air grew thick with tension, and then Lila's voice cut through everything. I see the head, Lila said calmly. Keep going, don't stop now. Maya groaned, her body bending with effort. Daniel whispered again and again, every word a rope pulling her forward. With me, breathe, push. Moments stretched like hours, but finally a cry pierced the room, tiny, fragile, yet filled with life. The baby's wail cut through the tension like sunlight breaking storm clouds. Relief washed over everyone. Lila lifted the small wriggling body, wrapping it carefully before laying the child gently onto Maya's chest. Maya sobbed, tears streaming freely. She cradled the baby against her trembling body, whispering words only a mother could. Daniel's eyes filled, his calm finally cracking as he bent low to kiss Maya's forehead, then touched the child's tiny hand. His voice was hoarse but full of awe. You did it. You both did it. The nurses smiled softly, their earlier indifference gone, replaced with quiet respect. Even the operations manager's eyes softened as she looked at the family before her. But at the edge of the room, the doctor muttered under his breath, bitterness still clawing at him. Daniel turned his head slowly, his gaze locking on the man. There was no anger in his eyes, now only cold truth. He spoke low, steady, each word sharp. You ignored her pain. You dismissed her voice. If not for Lila, my wife and child could have died because of you. The doctor swallowed, but pride forced him to sneer. I followed protocol. Daniel stood taller, his voice deep with authority he no longer hid. Your protocol is cruelty, and your cruelty ends here. The operations manager stepped forward, clipboard in hand. Dr. Reynolds, she said firmly, you are suspended effective immediately. Security will escort you out after this room is secure. Shock flickered across the doctor's face, but Daniel's presence left no space for protest. The man, who thought himself untouchable, was now powerless in the very building he believed he ruled. Maya clutched the baby tighter, whispering soft words of love. Daniel leaned down, kissing both of them, his heart full in a way he had never known. Around them, the storm outside had passed completely. Only quiet rain tapped against the windows, gentle and steady, as if the world itself had softened. The child's cry faded into small breaths, the room filling instead with a new sound, the sound of peace, fragile yet unshakable. Maya's strength had carried her through. Daniel's love had anchored her. And now, in this small, bright room, a new life had begun. But outside the door, whispers still moved through the hospital, growing louder with every passing minute. Soon, everyone would know who the quiet man at her side truly was. The baby slept soundly against Maya's chest, his tiny breaths rising and falling with hers. Her body was weak, but her eyes glowed with relief and love. Daniel stood close, one hand resting gently on her shoulder, the other brushing a finger across his child's small hand. For the first time that night, his heart eased. The storm outside had cleared, leaving only the soft sound of dripping rain. Inside, though, a different kind of storm had left its mark. The door opened quietly. Senior administrators, drawn by the whispers that spread like fire through the hospital, stepped into the room. Their polished shoes clicked against the floor, their faces tense as they saw the scene. The exhausted mother, the newborn child, the calm man at her side, and the disgraced doctor standing stiffly near the corner, the head administrator, a dignified Woman with sharp eyes walked forward. She looked at Daniel and bowed her head slightly. "Mr. Cross," she said softly, her voice filled with respect. "We did not know you were here tonight." The nurses froze. Even the operations manager straightened at the name. The truth, long held quiet, was now out in the open. Daniel Cross was not just a husband fighting for his wife. He was the man who owned the hospital itself, the one whose decisions built its walls, hired its people, and signed every paycheck. The doctor's face turned pale. His mouth opened, then shut again. No words coming. He finally understood the weight of his arrogance. He had dismissed the wife of the very man who commanded his career, his future, his reputation. Daniel's gaze remained steady. He didn't gloat, didn't raise his voice. He simply spoke the truth. No woman should have to beg for care. Not here, not anywhere. If this hospital stands for anything, it must stand for compassion. The head administrator nodded, her expression grave. "You are right. What happened tonight will not be forgotten. There will be consequences and changes." She turned to the staff in the room. "This is not only about power. This is about humanity. If we fail that, we fail everything." Maya shifted, her voice soft but firm. Though weak, she found the strength to speak. "I begged for help and I was ignored. I was treated like my pain was nothing." She looked at the doctor, her eyes steady despite her exhaustion. "If Leela had not stepped in, my baby might not be alive. That cannot happen to another woman." Leela stood quietly, her face calm but her eyes glistening. Daniel glanced at her with respect. "You listened," he said to her. "When others would not, you remembered what it means to care. Thank you." The room fell silent for a long moment. Then Daniel turned back to the doctor. "You forgot why you wear that coat. You thought rules were more important than lives. You dismissed her because you thought her voice didn't matter. But tonight, you learned it did." The doctor lowered, his head, shame heavy on his shoulders. Security stepped forward, and the operations manager gave the order. The man who once thought himself untouchable was escorted out of the room. His authority gone. Maya closed her eyes, kissing the baby's forehead. Daniel leaned closer, wrapping his arm around both of them. In that moment, titles, power, and wealth meant nothing. What mattered was that his family was safe, that love had carried them through the darkness. The head administrator gave a quiet promise before leaving. "This hospital will change. Tonight will be the reminder." Then she stepped out, closing the door softly behind her. In the quiet that followed, Daniel sat at Maya's side, watching their child sleep. He thought of how close he had come to losing everything, of how arrogance nearly stole their future. But he also thought of the strength in Maya's eyes, the courage in her cries, and the bond that no storm could ever break. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "You were never alone, and you never will be." Maya smiled weakly, her eyes closing as she drifted into rest. Daniel held her and the baby close, the weight of the night lifting at last. In that small, quiet room, surrounded by love, the world seemed to pause. A new life had begun, and with it, a promise that no one would ever silence their voices again.